This is Steve Eisenbrown, and I work in the State Department, the Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor Bureau. And my responsibilities over the past 15 years, actually since my retirement from the Foreign Service, has been the editing of the human rights reports that the State Department produces under legislation from the Congress. And in these 15 years, I've risen to the responsibility of being actually the coordinator of the reports and all their logistics and substantive aspects, working with others. I don't want to suggest that I am totally responsible. And so I was asked today, as part of a project, to say something about the role of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in our work. And it's very easy to say something about the Declaration as it pertains to the work on human rights. So there are 3 points that I would like to make. The first one is the mere existence of a Universal Declaration on Human Rights is practically a miracle of excellent politicking and organization on the part of those at the United Nations between 1946 and 48 who were able to lead the drafting and then the negotiation to have this document come to a vote. It's no mean feat. It is miraculous, actually, that a document was able to be agreed upon. I think it was December 1948 when the General Assembly voted, and if my memory is correct, there were no votes against the declaration. There were 48 of 58, I think, were in favor, countries were in favor, and then there were some abstentions, and there were a couple of countries that did not participate in the voting, but there were no votes against. And that was not just left to luck. I don't know the history, but I can imagine, having worked during my Foreign Service career on matters pertaining to the UN and its resolutions, that there is an enormous mountain of work that has to be done in advance to produce a result like this. That is the adoption unanimously, as it turned, well, no votes against the declaration. So that's really a miracle of cooperation. And of course, the people who get the credit, rightly so, Eleanor Roosevelt, who shepherded the entire process, but she wasn't alone in the drafting. The drafting, I understand, was done by those from Canada, France, Lebanon, and China, and the Republic of China. And there could have been a number of others, but those individuals from those 4 countries took leading roles in drafting. Right, so that's one. A second point I wanted to make is that the existence of the Universal Declaration facilitates the work of this bureau, that is the bureau that's devoted to human rights work in the department, because it provides a starting point. It's a framework for what are all people's human rights, regardless of nationality. And otherwise, the talk is nebulous, but it doesn't have to be, because there is an agreed upon definition of what are individual rights. And so that is a very important point. The Declaration itself is moral in its authority rather than legal. Although I'm told from those legal experts in the department that it is practically gaining acceptance in some quarters around the world as a legal document itself, but technically it is not. But it formed the basis for other treaties that did provide the legal basis for certain elements that were contained within the Universal Declaration. And I have a third point, which has to do with the reports that I work with and work with others, the human rights reports that were mandated by Congress in 1977 that the department produce each year. And after a couple of years at the very beginning, it was determined by Congress that the reports would be on all countries in the General Assembly, and then there are a few other political entities that have reports on them as well. And I can only marvel at the original individuals, and I don't know their names, who I guess in the mid to late 70s in the State Department had to figure out a format for this report that had been mandated by Congress. And the Congress gave some indication of what they wanted covered, but they didn't say anything in the legislation about the format, the way it would be covered. But some very, very smart people who knew the Universal Declaration took the Universal Declaration as a guiding principle for how the human rights reports should be organized. And it's also kind of a miracle of bureaucratics that in the 40-plus years that these reports have been published, the format has not essentially changed, and it is modeled after the way the Universal Declaration handles issues of universal human rights. The listing of what comes first, what comes second, and what comes third, and so forth. And so my hat is off to those individuals whose names I don't know, who created the format for the human rights reports. But it all goes back to the Universal Declaration, which is an essential document in the larger issue of dealing with human rights.